And then that abominable and mysterious thing occurred which I was a long time in understanding, but I grew sharp by dint of watching your thoughts and actions. You attached yourself to your children with all the security which they gave you while I bore them. You felt affection for them with all your aversion to me, and in spite of your ignoble fears, which were momentarily allayed by your pleasure in seeing me lose my symmetry. Oh, how often have I noticed that joy in you! I have seen it in your eyes and guessed it. You loved your children as victories, and not because they were of your own blood. They were victories over me, over my youth, over my beauty, over my charms, over the compliments which were paid me, and over those that were whispered around me without being paid to me personally. And you are proud of them, you make a parade of them, you take them out for drives in your break in the Bois de Boulogne, and you give them donkey rides at Montmorency. You take them to theatrical matinees so that you may be seen in the midst of them, so that people may say, "What a kind father!" and that it may be repeated. He had seized her wrist with savage brutality, and he squeezed it so violently that she was quiet and nearly cried out with the pain, and he said to her in a whisper, "I love my children, do you hear? What you have just told me is disgraceful in a mother, but you belong to me. I am master, your master. I can exact from you what I like and when I like, and I have the law on my side." He was trying to crush her fingers in the strong grip of his large, muscular hand, and she, livid with pain, tried in vain to free them from that vice which was crushing them. The agony made her breathe hard, and the tears came into her eyes. "You see that I am the master and the stronger," he said. When he somewhat loosened his grip, she asked him, "Do you think that I am a religious woman?" He was surprised and stammered, "Yes." "Do you think that I could lie if I swore to the truth of anything to you before an altar on which Christ's body is?" "No." "Will you go with me to some church?" "What for?" "You shall see. Will you?" "If you absolutely wish it, yes." She raised her voice and said, "Philippe!" And the coachman, bending down a little without taking his eyes from his horses, seemed to turn his ear alone toward his mistress, who continued, "Drive to Saint Philippe du Roule," and the Victoria, which had reached the entrance of the Bois de Boulogne, returned to Paris. Husband and wife did not exchange a word further during the drive, and when the carriage stopped before the church, Madame de Mascaret jumped out and entered it, followed by the Count a few yards distant. She went without stopping as far as the choir screen, and falling on her knees at a chair, she buried her face in her hands. She prayed for a long time, and he, standing behind her, could see that she was crying. She wept noiselessly, as women weep when they are in great, poignant grief. There was a kind of undulation in her body, which ended in a little sob, which was hidden and stifled by her fingers. But the Comte de Mascaret thought that the situation was lasting too long, and he touched her on the shoulder. That contact recalled her to herself, as if she had been burned, and getting up she looked straight into his eyes. "This is what I have to say to you. I am afraid of nothing, whatever you may do to me. You may kill me if you like. One of your children is not yours, and one only. That I swear to you before God, who hears me here. That was the only revenge that was possible for me in return for all your abominable masculine tyrannies, in return for the penal servitude of childbearing to which you had condemned me. Who is my lover? That you never will know. You may suspect everyone, but you never will find out. I gave myself to him without love and without pleasure, only for the sake of betraying you, and he also made me a mother. Which is the child? That also you never will know. I have 7. Try to find out. I intended to tell you this later, for one had not avenged oneself on a man by deceiving him unless he knows it. You had driven me to confess it today. I have now finished." She hurried through the church toward the open door, expecting to hear behind her the quick step of her husband, whom she had defied, and to be knocked to the ground by a blow of his fist, but she heard nothing and reached her carriage. She jumped into it at a bound, overwhelmed with anguish and breathless with fear, so she called out to the coachman, "Home!" and the horses set off at a quick trot. 2. The Comtesse de Mascaret was waiting in her room for dinner time, as a criminal sentenced to death awaits the hour of his execution. What was her husband going to do? Had he come home? Despotic, passionate, ready for any violence as he was, what was he meditating? What had he made up his mind to do? There was no sound in the house, and every moment she looked at the clock. Her lady's maid had come and dressed her for the evening, and had then left the room again. 8 o'clock struck, and almost at the same moment there were 2 knocks at the door, and the butler came in and announced dinner. "Has the Count come in?" "Yes, Madame la Comtesse. He is in the dining room." For a little moment she felt inclined to arm herself with a small revolver which she had bought some time before, foreseeing the tragedy which was being rehearsed in her heart. But she remembered that all the children would be there, and she took nothing except a bottle of smelling salts. He rose somewhat ceremoniously from his chair. They exchanged a slight bow and sat down. The 3 boys, with their tutor, Abbé Martin, were on her right, and the 3 girls, with Miss Smith, their English governess, were on her left. The youngest child, who was only 3 months old, remained upstairs with his nurse. The abbé said grace as usual when there was no company, for the children did not come down to dinner when guests were present. Then they began dinner. The Countess, suffering from emotion, which she had not calculated upon, remained with her eyes cast down, while the Count scrutinized now the 3 boys and now the 3 girls, with an uncertain, unhappy expression, which traveled from one to the other. Suddenly pushing his wine-glass from him, it broke, and the wine was spilt on the tablecloth, and at the slight noise caused by this little accident the Countess started up from her chair, and for the first time they looked at each other. Then, in spite of themselves, in spite of the irritation of their nerves caused by every glance, they continued to exchange looks, rapid as pistol shots. The abbé, who felt that there was some cause for embarrassment which he could not divine, attempted to begin a conversation, and tried various subjects, but his useless efforts gave rise to no ideas and did not bring out a word. The Countess, with feminine tact and obeying her instincts of a woman of the world, attempted to answer him 2 or 3 times, but in vain. She could not find words in the perplexity of her mind, and her own voice almost frightened her in the silence of the large room, where nothing was heard except the slight sound of plates and knives and forks. Suddenly her husband said to her, bending forward, "Here, amid your children, will you swear to me that what you told me just now is true?" The hatred which was fermenting in her veins suddenly roused her, and replying to that question with the same firmness with which she had replied to his looks, she raised both her hands, the right pointing toward the boys and the left toward the girls, and said in a firm, resolute voice and without any hesitation, "On the head of my children, I swear that I have told you the truth."